everybody. Thank you for starting your Saturday with us. It's The Sweat. Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow, Josh Applebaum with you here for the next 2 hours on DraftKings Network and VSiN. What do we have coming up on an action-packed 2-hour show? Let's take a look there on the big board. Washington versus Michigan, big one coming up there. We're going to have a championship breakdown during the show. We're getting to the point in time where storylines are minimal, so we're going to talk about some ref angles in play here with Brad Allen in Baltimore. Big game there between them and the Steelers. Then we're going to do a sports book recap and some 2024 predictions in the second hour of the show. But gentlemen, let's start with one of the biggest games on this 2-game Saturday slate here in the NFL. It is going to be the matchup between the Texans and Colts. I don't think any of us imagined when the schedule was released that this game would have such major implications and a major potential ripple effect on the, not just the playoffs, but in the AFC South that really was the Jaguars division to take. So let's go over the scenarios here and what can happen in this game. First and foremost, a wild card spot will be locked up with the winner of this game. But potentially, one of these two teams could steal that AFC South, whoever wins this game, and then Jacksonville loses tomorrow against the Titans. So let's start off with this game here, gentlemen. How are we feeling about Texans and Colts? Josh, I will start with you.
So this one's interesting because I think you can look at it a couple different ways. Now, I'm a big fan of looking at line movement. So the line movement in this one actually is going toward Houston. You did have a dog to fave flip. You open this game, Indianapolis at some shops -1.5. We've now flipped to Houston -1.5. Some books even maybe hinting toward -2. So I got to respect the fact that we've moved dog to fave in favor of Houston. But here's the thing, guys. We're starting to become very, very popular with the Houston Texans. And this is your primetime game tonight, most heavily bet game tonight. You're getting upwards of over 70% of bets going with Houston. So I'm looking at it now this way. If you're betting Houston, you're getting the worst of the number, and you're with the public in the most heavily bet game of the day. That, to me, are two red flags that I would like to be on the other side of. So I'm thinking now, guys, I think it's a buy low spot to grab the Colts. I'm going to go Colts here. If you can find a 2, that's great. If not, I'll take a 1.5. It's your ultimate contrarian play. They're only getting 29% of bets in the most heavily bet game of the day. And then you have a lot of system matches, Steve. You have primetime dogs, 57% against the spread since 2020. Divisional dogs, 55% ATS since 2020. Conference dogs +6 or less, 56% ATS since 2019. And then you look at the Colts and what they've done their last 3 home games, 3-0. They've really rolled, played well. I know there's a backdoor cover against them last week with the Raiders, but they're very, Jekyll and Hyde home and road. So I think the angle now is to buy low on the Colts in this spot. I'll take the points. It's also a great teaser play, 1.5 to 7.5. I think you could pair that with the Bengals, Steve, where, again, they're playing the Browns who are resting everyone. You could take Bengals 7.5 to 1.5. But again, if you ask me Monday, I'd say, man, a lot of sharp money Texans.
Sure.
But I'm thinking it's becoming too public. I'm going to buy low and take the Colts in the points.
So, Julian, we have the Colts here who are 4-6 ATS as an underdog, but also the Texans are 0-2 ATS as a road favorite. Those 2 games that they were road favorites, they had that 15-13 loss against the Panthers. That was the Carolinas' first win of the season. Then they had that 30-6 loss against the Jets of all teams.
Yeah, I don't see the appeal here of Houston getting hammered from, I believe they opened 2.5-point dogs all the way up to favorites on the road in Saturday night in this game. I get it, CJ Stroud is awesome, but the Colts have been really good lately. Josh mentioned the last 3 home games, but this team, since turning the corner, they're 6-2 overall over their last 8 games. I know Houston will say they're a different team, but they won by double digits at Houston earlier in the season, so they match up decently well here. You look at Houston, they've dropped 3 of its last 4 road games. I know they got the super impressive and maybe improbable win in Cincy when Joe Burrow was still healthy. Those other games, you mentioned the Jets, Steve, the Panthers, the Falcons.
2 bad losses.
This team can drop bad games, and I think they aren't going to be able to live up to it here on Saturday night.
All right, let's talk about some props in this game here. Obviously, we have a very close spread in this one, but there are a lot of props to play in this one because this is probably one of those games where we're really going to see some effort from both sides here. Both these teams are putting out their full offenses and defense. One that caught my eye here, at least, Nico Collins over 5.5 receptions. That's been the guy for C.J. Stroud when he's been healthy. When these two guys have been on the field together, 7.8 targets for Nico Collins, 5.5 receptions, so right at that line there for today. 89 receiving yards with C.J. Stroud. Obviously, no Noah Brown in this game. Robert Woods coming into this game questionable. That's one prop that I like. Julian, what's the prop that you like for this one?
Yeah, I know I'm on the Indy side of this game, but rushing-wise, Indy does rank 27th in terms of yards per game allowed. So if we go to the rushing department, I know that we have some narratives in this game. I know, I'm like dying here. There we go. So Singletary, 63.5 yards on the rushing prop, and he is a guy incentive-based wise that has some incentives. I know we'll talk about it later in the show in terms of all the ones on Sunday, but incentive-wise, he has rushing incentives. Not that it's going to come into play in a game that means a lot. I think these are the games we can kind of look past. You're going to do whatever you have to do to win this game. But both of these teams, when they get leads, tend to run the ball. So Singletary at 63.5 rushing yards. Colts, let me get the number, 127.8 yards per game allowed on the ground. I think this is a spot, even though Indy comes out on top, in my opinion, we're looking at the Texans on the ground. Everybody wants to also look at C.J. Stroud, so maybe a little bit contrarian going to a running back here.
Yeah, speaking of C.J. Stroud, too, Josh, last night his passing yard prop was at 254.5. It's up to 261.5. We're talking about a 12-hour difference, about a 5-yard jump from that one. Any interest in Stroud? Because you do like the Colts, so if you like the Colts, maybe that means C.J. Stroud is passing more in this game.
Yeah, no, great point by you, Steve. The fact that this thing's been steamed up so hard. So on the one hand, it's like, hey, I want to be with that sharp money. On the other hand, it's, hey, am I getting a bad number? Now, if he flies over and gets close to 300, you'll say it won't matter, but I think as bettors, you want to kind of have a point of ending for you or in terms of, hey, it's gone too far where I feel like the value's now gone. I'd flip it the other way, Steve. Gardner Minshew, over 237.5. That's minus 130 to the over. That's really being juiced up. I know Stroud, great rookie, going to win Offensive Rookie of the Year here. He's had an awesome year, had the concussion, but came back and played well. But to me, that Minshew one could be a little bit under the radar since it's juiced up. But I'm going to go to one of Minshew's favorite targets, not Michael Pittman. He's the best wide receiver, but Josh Downs, over 38.5 receiving yards. It's juiced up minus 135. This was minus 125 just yesterday, so I love it when the juice on a prop in one direction just continues to rise in one way or in one direction without any buyback. It tells you, hey, you got to pay a higher price, but most likely you're paying a higher price for a reason because smart money's coming in on the over. Josh Downs hit this last week. He only caught 2 passes, but 58 yards. He's a big, deep threat. He can really take it to the house. He's only 5'9", but he can really get a bunch of yards after catch. And Downs is also second on the team in targets with 95. Michael Pittman is the leader there. So I'd target Downs over 38.5. I'd look at Minshew over. And Steve, one angle here to look at too, DraftKings has the make-miss market for the playoffs. Right now, it's minus 105 for the Colts to make the playoffs. If you think they're going to make the playoffs, bet them on the money line. You're going to get a better payout, like plus 105, plus 110. So always be conscious of a different way to bet the same thing that you're thinking about.
Yeah, without a doubt, too. And just going back to that C.J. Stroud thing, in that first matchup against the Colts earlier this year, 384 passing yards in that game. That was kind of the first game that we really thought, okay, maybe C.J. Stroud is going to end up working out here in the NFL. We're going to go into this more in the second hour of the show, but just want to kind of quickly hit on this Steelers and Ravens game that we have later on today, too, as well. So we don't have to go too deep into this, but what's your early lean on this game?
So my lean is actually buying low on Baltimore. We've seen a big overreaction here, I think, and you're going to see this in Week 18. Some people will say Week 18 is the hardest week to bet. Other people love betting it. I think you got to find something that works for you in terms of a sweet spot of feeling like you have an edge, but not maybe buying into something that's moved too much. My angle here, Steve, would be Baltimore opened, as high as minus 3.5. It's moved all the way to Pittsburgh minus 4. It's come back down to 3. The late movement is going with Baltimore, and there's a lot of quotes coming out of the Baltimore locker room about, even though they're resting a lot of guys, no Lamar Jackson, Tyler Huntley's been pretty good anytime he's come in. I think he's 5-3 against the spread in his career. And that Baltimore Ravens culture, even though they don't have their star players, next man up, play hard. Harbaugh's great as a dog. I'm going to look at taking the points of Baltimore.
Julian, in a year of backup quarterbacks, I think it's still fair to say that Huntley is probably the most comparable backup that we've seen in the NFL. He could easily be a quarterback one in any other offense.
Yeah, he's a good quarterback, and he's a good plug and play. He does a lot of things similar to what Lamar Jackson does, so you can put him in there and not change much of what you do. Thing is, you're changing a lot of what you do because all the other starters are not going to be playing too. The under's been getting pounded in this game, both weather-wise and kind of motivation-wise. Baltimore just kind of wants to get out of there. Pittsburgh, they've been an under team all year. This should be a game that we don't see many points, so I agree with the move to the under on the point total. It is going to be a popular topic in Week 18. The public is going to want to bet teams that have motivation against teams that are resting their guys. Tampa against Carolina, games like that. And you kind of have to make that decision. Is the motivation worth all those points, or are the professionals, the sharps, who are going to be saying there's too much value here to pass and plug their nose and take Baltimore +3, take Carolina +4.5? Is that the right side in those games?
And the other thing is, too, is that obviously Pittsburgh is playing for their playoff life in here, too, so they have their full arsenal on offense and defense, too. I do worry about how good
full
defensively.
Arsenal of Mason Rudolph and company.
I mean, hey, give the guy credit. He's been solid.
He's been better than expected.
And we'll talk about that again in the second hour of the show here. But just real quickly, Josh, you're just mentioning that over-under here at 34.5. This was 38.5 earlier in the week here. Is it getting too low, or are you kind of in that area?
I'm still thinking it's under nothing. You could tease it up maybe and get closer to 40 here. But Steve, your favorite factor here, the weather. We joked about it earlier. It's going to be rainy. It's going to be cold. It's going to be windy. I think you get a low-scoring game in this one. I'd still lean under.
Yeah, so we'll talk about that a lot here in the second hour. Still a lot to come here on The Sweat. We are just beginning here, but coming up next, the National Championship on Monday. We look at the movement this week and where Josh and Julian stand ahead of the big game. We'll be right back.
What's going on, and welcome back to The Sweat here on DraftKings Network. Julian Edlow here with Josh Applebaum, and we got the Natty, Josh.
The big one.
Setting up pretty good. We wound up getting 1 versus 2. We wind up getting undefeated versus undefeated. We got the tail of the tape up here on the screen as you see. 2 teams, both averaging 36 points per game or more. So I think that we got the 2 best teams here, and the market obviously has been kind of disrespecting Washington all season. You look at the betting splits here, Josh, and the public is doing what we kind of thought the public was going to do. It's 59% of the tickets right now on Washington getting the 4.5 points, which has not moved yet. Total's been on the move a little bit. Public backing Washington here. Sharper money looks like it's still staying on Michigan. Give me your early thoughts here, I guess.
Yeah, so I think if we go back a week ago, Julian, to me, the 2 games that we saw previously were pretty clear in one way to look at it. One was the fact that you had late move going toward Washington. They were 4 down to, was it 4.5, down to 4, down to 3.5.
Yep.
So it's pretty clear late movement was going Washington against Texas. You look at that Michigan game, epic sweat, but Michigan was the contrarian play with that late line move. So we could say that Michigan was a sharp bet. This one is difficult for a couple reasons. Number one, you mentioned the bet splits. That's where I start. Let's get rid of the noise. Let's look at the signal. You currently only around 41% of bets are on Michigan, but 48% of the money is on Michigan. I like that bet split on Michigan. Low bets, higher dollars. We saw a couple books even open, I think, minus 3.5. A Vegas book opened 3.5, got up to 4.5. We're pretty much staying at 4.5. So I do respect that the line is moved toward Michigan and they have a good bet split. But here's where I think it becomes a difficult handicap. And why, believe it or not, Julian, I'm looking toward the Huskies and the points here. Kalen DeBoer.
I'm surprised by this.
So here's the thing. Kalen DeBoer as a dog.
Well, you know what?
Yeah.
We're going to get to the bet on the game. Save that for the game because we're going to go through the other 2 games first. So, I owe the show donuts.
Yep.
Michigan beat Alabama. It was splitting hairs. Just get a stop on 4th and 2, and Josh is buying the donuts, but we'll save that for another day. Thoughts on that Michigan-Alabama game and, you know, what it means, if anything, coming into the national title game?
Yeah, so I think my takeaway from that game is just kind of trusting the data, sticking with the data. Now, it's easy to say this game could have gone either way. It was an epic sweat. Michigan looked good early. Bama came back, went to overtime. I mean, a great game just, you know, in terms of being a football fan. But to me, it's all about that trendy dog. Anytime I see a dog getting 60%, 70% or more bets, that's a red flag that I want to bet against. Now, I was talking about how, you know, Washington, to me, in terms of these angles we'll get into as a dog, it really entices me. The thing that I'm kind of holding on to is that they're not that trendy. Again, you mentioned it, Julian, 59% of bets. Also, remember, the public loves to bet these games as closer to the game day. So we have all weekend to go into Monday. Does this even out? Does it get down to more like a 50-50 bet split? If you're going to take the dog, you want to see that. You don't want to see these percentages increase on Washington. You want them to become less public, a little bit more contrarian. But here's where I would look at if you're undecided. Because again, percentages, line move looks Michigan, but all these dog angles we'll get in a second too are really screaming at you to take the Huskies. Where is the next move, Julian? And I'll throw it at you where you think it's going to be. We're at 4.5 right now. If you see this thing rise to 5, get juiced up and go to 5 before Monday, that's a great sign for Michigan. If you see this thing fall down to 4, that is a great sign on the other side toward the Huskies. So where do we move next? If you want to just continue to wait and hold this thing out and get the answer to that question, that could be one way to attack it. What do you think, Julian? Are we more likely to go up to 5 or down to 4 here? Or stay the same?
It's a really good question, and it's held steady. I think that we are more likely to go up to 5 because that's going to be the professional side, and they're going to want more public money, right or wrong, on Washington. And I lean to Washington in the game. We'll stick with the Natty here. We talked a little bit about movement on the spread. Let's talk total for a second because the total is going up. And you saw on the graphic leading into the segment, these teams score 36 points per game for Michigan, more for Washington. I think the Washington offense versus the Michigan defense is the most fascinating matchup of this game. You're getting a defense better, most likely, than Washington has seen all season, depending on what you think of Utah, Oregon. And you have a Michigan team that is absolutely seeing their best offense of the season. They've allowed a season high of 24 points. That was to Maryland. That was to Ohio State. Washington's team total is 24.5 in this game. Market is saying Washington is going to set a new high in points allowed by this Michigan defense, and I tend to agree, and that has the total creeping up. Do you think that's going to be the right side, though?
Yeah, so I'm always wary of just taking an over in a championship game just because that's the public play and that's just the obvious play. Everyone who's going to gather around a TV at their house or go to a bar or whatever, they're going to say, hey, let me put $5 on an over, maybe not have a position on either side, or maybe you're scared by these, Michigan on the one-hand line move in percentages versus Washington as a dog, and you say, hey, let's split it down the middle, I'll take the over, root for points, that's going to be fun. Now, I do give a lot of credit here to the line move and the percentages because this game opened, Julian, around 55, 55 and a half. You're up to 56, some 56 and a halves out there. Currently, you're getting 69% bets, 73% of the money is going over. But I'm always wary of late movement. Like you see this all the time where, early in the week, a line will get steamed up and then you get to game day. And is there a number in the wise guys' heads where they say, hey, if this gets to 56 and a half, 57, we're going to hit it, and you see game day movement that drops it late. So to me, it's probably a layoff. I don't want to be, getting the worst of the number with the public after it's moved and taken over. But I do have to respect that it has risen. Tells me at least early when the line opened, you did have some respect and money go over.
All right, preseason-wise, maybe not the biggest surprise in the world that Michigan is here. They were 8-1 before the season. Huskies, I'm kicking myself. I was on the over 9 wins. I was on them to win the Pac-12. What did I not do? I did not bet them to go all the way. 40-1 on the preseason odds for Washington. Any surprise here, I guess? No SEC team being in it for one of the first times since the college football playoff became a thing. What do you think of these two teams ultimately coming through and getting into this game and not having an SEC team here?
So I think it's actually great not to have an SEC team. I know it's the best conference here in all of college football, but it's almost like in our region, Julian, we love the Patriots in the Super Bowl every year, but the rest of the country didn't love it. Patriots fatigue. So the fact that we have two teams that are not in the SEC, to me, could make for a more competitive game. There's actually a couple bookmakers that I respect that were talking about the fact that we don't have an SEC team. It could be a more competitive game. Remember, we've seen a lot of these blowouts in recent years. Just the fact that you don't have a heavyweight, best team from the best conference, maybe it becomes more of a competitive game. But here I just want to throw this at you, Julian, just some of these dog angles. DeBoer, 5-0 ATS as a dog. Yep. Also straight up as a dog.
Yep.
The national championship game, since we switched to this model, it's 5-3 ATS to the dog in this game. Also, Bulldogs getting 3 or more. They are 56% ATS this year. They're 60% ATS since 2022. And I keep going back to that disrespect angle. I think Michigan, they're favored. They have the pressure. Washington, you're playing with house money. You mentioned, what were they, 40-1? I mean, no one expected them to be there. They can play free. And they've had a lot of these quotes. Braylon Trice said before the last game, they like being underdogs. They feel disrespected. I think that's a wheelhouse for DeBoer, for this team. They can just say, hey, we made it. No one believed in us. They still don't believe in us. Rallying cry, just like we saw when the Ravens went to San Francisco and the NFL and went outright as a dog.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting that, by the way, we forget Washington. Big Ten team next year. These two teams play in October, a conference game. Pac-12, what are we doing here? No more Pac-12, and they were so good this year. Let's talk props real quick, Josh. I'm going to, like most things in this game, I'm going to go to the Washington side here, and I'm going to go to the passing attack. I don't care who was in Washington's way. I know Michigan is a step up, but I'm still going to back them there. I'm looking at Rome on Dunze on the over on the receiving yards. I believe it's crept up to 89.5 last I looked on DK Sportsbook. People are there's other shops up into the mid-90s, and people are playing it over in the 90s. He has gone over, when I wrote it up in my article, 88.5 yards in 11 of 14 games this year. What it is now, he's gone over in 10 of 14. 10 of them have been 100-yard games. Everyone knows where Washington's going with the ball. Other teams haven't been able to stop it. Michigan hasn't been able to stop Ohio State. Marvin Harrison, 5 grabs for $118 this year, 7 grabs for $120 last year. I love the Washington passing attack to keep going in this game for a prop. You want to throw one out for me?
I'm with you. And by the way, thanks for showing me how to find college props on the DK website, because they're a little bit hard to find every now and again.
The Cheesecake Factory menu gets dicey from time to time, but it's all in there. Just keep looking.
So I'm with you, Julian. I'm going to stick with the Washington player, but I'm going to go to the tight end Jack Westover.
I like this one too.
Yeah, it's kind of under the radar. I like when I'm looking at these props, especially in the NFL, is like, don't give me the top guys that everyone's going to bet. Let's go down the board to maybe guys that aren't being targeted that much but still are juiced up over. So Westover, the tight end, the senior, his whole career is coming down to this game. over 25.5 receiving yards. 25.5 doesn't seem like a lot. Can he get you 26 in a championship game? I think that's definitely possible. It's juiced up over -120, telling you some liability over. He had 6 catches for 59 yards against Texas last week. And you mentioned all those great wide receivers for Washington, Julian. I think Michigan maybe focuses on them, and maybe Westover gets a lot of one-on-one coverage, or maybe gets undervalued because of all the attention paid to the great wideouts. So give me Jack Westover over 25.5 receiving yards.
I like that prop too. Real quick, we got less than a minute. My best bet for the game is Washington team total over 24.5. 34 indoors neutral game against Oregon as a dog. 37 indoors neutral game Texas as a dog. They're getting over 24 in this game.
Huskies plus 4.5, Julian. I'm taking the dog.
We're Husky guys here on this show. I'm surprised. No Michigan love. There's going to be Michigan love from some very sharp bettors in this game. But Washington has thrived, as we mentioned, in this role all year. Cannot wait for Monday night. But we will wait for that. We got a lot of NFL to talk about next here on Saturday and Sunday on The Sweat.
to the Sweat here on this Saturday morning. Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow, Josh Applebaum. I'm going to talk some NBA hoops. We got a 4-game slate coming up here tonight. All games tip off by 8:10 p.m. Eastern tonight. So make sure to get those bets in nice and early. Let's start off, guys, with what's probably going to be the highest scoring game on this slate here. We got two teams in the top 5 in scoring, with the Celtics and Pacers going at each other. Pacers right now averaging over 130 points per game. All of these teams, by the way, with the exception of the Bucks, are coming off, are on the tail end of a back-to-back here. Only the Bucks are coming in here fresh. Pacers, Julian, 1-4 ATS and straight up on the tail end of a back-to-back this season.
Well, they're fresh off of 150 points last night against the Hawks. So, yes, they certainly can score. Celtics, 126 at home against the Jazz in a game that was well out of hand as well. I'm going to look to the Celtics here. They had no starter play more than 27 minutes against Utah, and Al Horford didn't play, suggesting that he will play on the back end of the back-to-back. Last time this team was in Indy, they had their sights set on Vegas in-season tournament. Jason Tatum said they wanted that. He wanted to go to Vegas. They dropped that game. So I think if we're going to get a Celtics team here, and you know, the Pacers should be fresher than those other back-to-backs, given that they also had a blowout victory. But if you're going to give me the Celtics at full strength without playing too many minutes last night, in a spot they probably have a little bit of revenge on their mind, I will lay the points. This is growing. This is up 5, 5.5, 6. I'll lay the points with the Celtics. I think that indicates they're going to have all their guys in and be looking at this game in a relatively serious light, given what happened the last time they were in Indy.
Josh, this over-under is 10 points higher than every other game here on this slate. Any feeling on the over-under, or do you like a side on this one?
So in terms of what Julian mentioned, I'm right with him there. The Celtics did have the line move, -5, 5.5, now up to 6. Pretty good bet split on Boston, too. 45% bets, 73% of the money. But I'm going to look toward the total here, Steve. I'm going to take the over. I think yesterday was a great test case in that game that still went over with the Pacers. It was 262. I think the public gets worried by these huge numbers. You see how this is the highest total in the world of all time. It still goes over. So I wouldn't be worried by how high this one is. It's 247.5, feels really high, but it opened at 245.5. So it's risen since it's opened. Pretty good bet split here on the over, Steve. 78% money, 78% bets, 95% of the money. And again, a lot of the respected bettors bet this thing as soon as it came out to hit that total and make it rise. And I got a system for you, Steve, on back-to-backs in the NBA. So are you ready for some NBA systems, man? We're going to switch sports.
Yeah, let's
a bit of a surprise. I know you're excited. When both teams are on the second leg of a back-to-back, take the over. It's 11-6 to the over this year, 65%. I think the thought process is maybe tired legs. You don't lock down on defense. You take easier shots. You don't, check up or kind of defend your guy like you would normally if you have that energy. So in these back-to-backs, you do tend to see these overs hit. You mentioned it, Boston number 3, offensive efficiency. Indy number 1, Indy super fast-paced. And then also you look at when the total is 240 or more, the over is 42 and 28, 60%. So I'll take the over here. Maybe we get another 130 to 125 game.
Knicks, big road favorites here against the Washington Wizards, who handled Philly last night, 128-92. Kind of a surprising one there. Josh, what's your feeling on this one? Washington, by the way, 0-5 on game 2 of a back-to-back.
So everyone's taking the Knicks. I mean, this is the most lopsided play of the day. Nearly 90% of bets are laying it with the Knicks. Knicks really haven't moved, though. They opened -9. They pretty much stayed -9. In terms of the total, I would lean a little under. It fell 239 down to 237.5, and you do have a pretty good bet split there toward the under. But I'm going to go with a prop bet. And I'm going to target Dante DiVincenzo. Remember him on Villanova?
Steve doesn't. I do.
You remember him on Villanova. I'm sure you do, Julian. But give me over 17.5 points, rebounds, and assists for DiVincenzo. It's juiced up over -125. He's gone over this number in 4 straight. And remember that trade that the Knicks just made, getting rid of Quickly and RJ Barrett, bringing in Anunoby. There's an opening here for a guard spot with more minutes for DiVincenzo. So I'm going to bank on him to give you 18 or more points, rebounds, and assists.
Julian, obviously, Knicks, like I mentioned, had a good win over there against Philly, but they're also struggling on the second night of a back-to-back, 2-5 straight up, and ATS in that scenario.
Yeah, this is probably the easiest game of the 4 for me to pass on, but I would not be laying the points with the Knicks, as Josh kind of alluded to. And I don't know if I can get my hands dirty enough to bet on the Wizards here. I think it's probably a good prop game. I am gonna let things shake out before betting props. Not that I disagree with Josh's prop, but like we mentioned, we have a short slate with almost all the teams playing back-to-backs. We're almost certainly gonna get lineup news one way or another for some of these teams. So I would be surprised if, not just for Knicks Wizards, but all of these games, we don't get some lineup news that opens up a spot, like Emmanuel Quickly's absence opens up a spot for DiVincenzo to do a little bit more, and then maybe be able to capitalize a little bit more on the prop market. So Knicks should win this game. Maybe Washington keeps it competitive at home, but I think a better prop angle will open up by the time this game tips off.
All right, so we have the biggest lopsided game on this 4-game slate here with Utah and Philly. We got two teams who are coming off a loss from last night. Philly 7-3 straight up after a loss this season. Neither team has performed particularly well on the second game of a back-to-back here, but Josh, Philly has been one of the best ATS teams overall. 23-10 overall, 13-4 as a home favorite, 11.5-point favorite here tonight against Jazz.
So it's funny, Steve, when I got in the car and drove to the office this morning, I was saying, hey, Philly might be a play here to lay the points with, because there's a system match that I love. A
Who'd you say
favorite.
that to?
I was picturing Josh in his car driving. You're like, you know what?
Yeah.
Philly might be the play today.
Yeah, they might be. These are things to think about when you're driving into work. But this is a system match. I love a favorite off a blowout loss. They got blown out by the Knicks last night. You come back the next game, teams in this spot are 105-78 against the spread, 57% over the last 3 seasons. But then I get into work, Steve, and I'm seeing this line fall to the Utah Jazz, 12.5 down to 11.5. And then if you look at the bet splits, they look pretty good on the Jazz. 28% bets, 70% of the money.
Yep.
So that really screams to me, Julian, maybe there is some respect for Utah. And then also you look at double-digit road dogs. You're getting 10 or more, you're on the road. These teams are 32-24 ATS, 57% against the spread this year. So I guess moral of the story is I may lay off because I got conflicting system matches, but don't get locked into a play when you're driving into work. Give it some time, let it ruminate, and then maybe just come up with this.
Ruminate?
Yeah,
that's a strong word for a Saturday morning.
I was an English major, if you didn't know that. You class of 09.
I will say I did not know that, and nothing has alluded to that at all during the show except for that moment
You got it,
right
buddy.
here. Julian, are you back in the big home favorite here with the 76ers?
Well, I wasn't talking to myself at all in my car on the way in here,
Same.
but I do have a take on this game. And it, like betting splits, Josh says, maybe some respect for Utah. Well, that's how it works in the NFL, in college. What this means in the NBA, I don't think it's respect. I think it's Joel Embiid might sit the second leg of this back-to-back. Maxey, you have the blowouts last night.
Yep.
People sitting. Maxey played 36 minutes in that blowout. Embiid played 36 minutes in that blowout. If anybody is ruled out of this game, particularly Embiid, obviously that's going to be a big deal. Utah, a team, even if he does play, I guess, that has a lot of size, they have at least fouls to give on Embiid with some of these guys. I'm not a big fan of Utah, particularly on the road. So when I see these splits, I think it is, whether it's right or wrong, NBA, a lot of this betting is anticipation, overnight, early in the morning. Market is anticipating that Embiid sits this one. If Philly puts its injury report out and Embiid is good to go, you're going to see this one move the other way again and the splits kind of even out. And that Josh that was talking to himself in the car on the way here is going to start believing in his thoughts again about in his original position. So kind of like the Knicks game, I would wait on this one unless you have a strong take that Embiid is going to sit. Then you're going to back Utah.
Talking to himself and letting himself know that he was an English major.
Exactly.
Yes.
Got to remind myself every
In
now and
college.
again. Yeah.
Let's go to the final game on this slate here. Tip off at 8:10 p.m. Eastern. The Bucks are the only team with the rest advantage coming into this one here, going up against the Houston Rockets. Last game that they played was on Thursday in that 125-121 win over the Spurs and Wemby, although everyone's talking about Wemby going over Giannis in that highlight that I think we all saw on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. Interesting stat here, though. The Bucks are 6-2 straight up with the rest advantage, Josh, but only 2-6 ATS.
So a little too high to what you mentioned there, Steve, to take the money line play. I mean, what are they now? Minus
250.
Minus 250, yeah. So I can't lay that. The line did move toward Milwaukee. They opened -5 up to 6.5. Pretty good bet split right now. You have 67% bets, 92% money on Milwaukee. But I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to take the under in this one. It opened 240. It's been bet down to 238.5, 238. Some books even going to 237.5. And old friend of ours, as Celtics fans, Ime Udoka. Remember, he was all about defense. He's really got this team playing well defensively. They're 18-14 to the under. They're second in defensive efficiency, and they're very slow on offense, too, 23rd in terms of pace. So that angle you gave, Steve, win the game with Milwaukee, but do you cover? That's the question you got to ask yourself. But I'm going to go under in this one. I think it's a lot of points for a Houston team that's really good defensively and very slow in terms of pace.
Julian, Rockets one game over 500 in that loss last night to the Timberwolves, 122-95. What are your thoughts on this one?
Houston have been one of the best home teams in the NBA, and I backed them in the first half at home last night against a Minnesota team that had been a fade on the first half line, particularly on the road. Didn't win that one. They've been getting a little worse on the road. You look at the Bucks here, they fit the same system. They're 3-11-2 to the first half spread away. You would want to fade them. Ultimately, I can't do it. This game would be Bucks or pass. Houston's regressing a little bit. Bucks have looked very good, even on the road when you get to the full game. So I'd probably lay it with Milwaukee if I'm playing the game.
All right, boys, we're going to take a quick break here. When we return, Jessie Cofield, remember the queen of DraftKings? She's back talking some hockey.
Shows?
Yeah, she's talking some hockey of all things when we return here on The Sweat.
newest Seattle team, and another very successful one. You never know. Joey Decord, the goaltender for the Kraken, might be the next Seattle sports legend based on his recent success with the injury to Philip Grubauer. So whether it's a long shot like the Vezina or a futures look at the Kraken to make the playoffs or do some damage, I think some of their underlying numbers suggest they would be dangerous like they were last year to teams like Colorado and Dallas, to anyone that they play if they sneak into this postseason.
Yeah, Pete, speaking of the Kraken, I mean, they're one of the hottest teams in the league right now. Are they over that slow start, ready for another cup run, or are they still facing an uphill battle to repeat that solid run they had in the playoffs last year?
Well, I think the obstacle, we've been talking about it on the NHL Fantasy on Ice podcast, is one of my concerns for the ceiling of anybody in that Pacific Division. It's so very tough. Look at how good Edmonton has been after their slow start, with McDavid full circle here and playing his best hockey, and Chris Knobloch after the coaching change has been so good. The LA Kings have been a dominant force. They've been there before. They always struggle against the Oilers. The Golden Knights are the defending champs. And, oh, yeah, don't forget about the Vancouver Canucks, like one of the biggest surprises in the whole league and an offensive juggernaut right there. So no matter which way you slice it, that Pacific Division is absolutely loaded. So anybody's chances on going on a deep run there might be against the odds a little bit, but one or two different wrinkles going on for Seattle as well right now, Anna, right? It's Burakovsky back. He scored a goal last night. That's good to see. And they also traded for Thomas Tatar. Those are two impact forwards that could give another layer to that offense that really fell flat over the first 2 months or so.
Yeah, Anna, what's your take here on the Kraken at this point?
I think the NHL is just a tougher league this season than it has been in seasons past. And the Western Conference has a lot of teams that go beyond just the Pacific, even the Central of the Kraken hope to sneak in a wild card spot that are just looking a little bit better than Seattle right now. I think they have some concerns, holes in the lineup that they haven't necessarily addressed. They're trying to. And I think maybe if they sneak in, exactly what Pete said, they're a team that could go on an underrated run. But I think the road for them getting into the postseason is looking pretty tough right now.
All right, let's talk about Saturday's slate here. We start with the Hughes family reunion as Quinn and the Canucks head to New Jersey. Anna, should we put all three in our DFS lineups here?
Why not? You know, I love these games. I love when they play against each other because rarely have you seen three brothers in the NHL all be like superstars. Even Luke Hughes is showing flashes of that right now. But New Jersey looked good in their first meeting. I like Vancouver in this one. The Canucks are so incredibly underrated despite how much success they're having. I feel like a lot of people think it's still a bit of a fluke, but the Canucks do lead the NHL in goals per game so far. Their offense is great. Quinn Hughes has been phenomenal so far this season, but I think the spotlight I want to shine in this matchup is on their third line, most underrated third line in the entire NHL of Dakota Joshua, Teddy Bluger, and Connor Garland. So you could probably pick up one of those pieces for very, very low value, and they could add a lot in your lineup.
All right, Pete, what do you think? Which team has the edge in this one?
I mean, Vancouver should be in the driver's seat for most of this game, but I did want to just expand on what Anna said about Luke Hughes. I mean, this guy leads rookie defenseman in goals, points, and power play points this season, and he hasn't even really hit full stride yet. There's been a little turbulence in the Devils on both ends, so a lot of defensive responsibility. Dougie Hamilton has been out for a while and sounds like he's going to miss maybe the rest of the regular season at this rate, which is not good news. But for the fantasy appeal of Luke Hughes and fellow rookie defenseman Simone Nemec, like, you should tap into these guys any way that you can in DFS and the props market. Luke Hughes really heating up of late. 6 points in his past 4 games with 3 goals in that span. He's been playing on power play 1 all season long for them. So that means exposure to his good old brother, Jack Hughes, on the first unit.
All right, guys, we got a potential cup preview. Panthers are in Denver. Pete, who wins and what are the odds we actually get this series in June?
I don't think it's like my favorite matchup in terms of most likely to happen, but it would be a great one. It would be a rematch from many moons ago, and the Panthers are just a dominant wrecking ball right now, regardless of any adversity they've faced with the early season injuries to Montour and Ekblad and the slow start offensively for Matthew Tkachuk. I've just been really impressed by Sergei Bobrovsky. Nobody's talking about him in the Vezina Trophy race. He continues to climb the ladder each passing week, and a big win over the Golden Knights for Bob. And, I think my concerns about this game for Florida are, their injuries that they sustained on Thursday. Alexander Barkov and Evan Rodriguez, two of the focal points of that offense, are uncertain for the game. So certainly keep an eye on that. If both of those guys or one of them are out, maybe you lean the other way with the Avalanche.
Anna, how are you feeling about this matchup?
The Florida Panthers do look good. I got a front row seat to watch them in Arizona, and this team looks really, really dominant right now. But Colorado is not getting enough credit, specifically one player. And I talked to Pete about this a lot. Nathan MacKinnon just is not getting enough airtime for the way he's been playing this season. He's currently tied for the most points in the NHL with Nikita Kucherov, has 64 at the moment. But even within his past little stretch, he has 8 points in his last 3 games, playing out of his mind. And obviously the Colorado Avalanche goes beyond Nathan MacKinnon. Cale Makar having a great year. Mikko Rantanen, Valeri Nichushkin's heating up right now. And the list just goes on and on. It's a stacked team. They won a Stanley Cup for a reason. And Nathan MacKinnon looks like he's ready to lead that charge again.
Anna, who's in a good DFS spot today to put up some points? Got any forwards that you're really liking?
I'm really liking Casey Middlestat of the Buffalo Sabres playing against the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Penguins a bit of an unstable team this season, so are the Sabres, but Middlestat has been looking kind of solid over this last little stretch. He has 11 points, 5 goals in his last 9 games, so maybe he keeps that production going against the Penguins in this one.
Pete, who are you liking?
I'm looking at Jake DeBrusk for the Boston Bruins, really heating up lately with a 5-game point streak. He's got 7 points in that span. 12 shots, so some nice coverage there. And I'm just continuing to marvel at the Boston Bruins' ability to overcome their offseason losses, some injuries along the way, switching up their top 6 pretty drastically. Pavel Zacha's now on the wing with Geekie and Pasternak, and then a really nice landing spot for DeBrusk on the second line with Brad Marchand and Charlie Coyle. Coyle has been like one of the biggest surprises in all of fantasy this year. And a matchup against the Lightning, still a dangerous top-heavy team, but you're not used to seeing the Tampa Bay Lightning, right, guys, like near the bottom of the league in goals allowed per game, currently allowing the 8th most goals on average per game, which is insane. I know Vasilevsky's back and he's playing pretty well, big picture, but he's been giving up a lot of goals lately as well.
All right, Pete, who do you like to put up some points on the blue line in DFS?
Wanted to show some love for Noah Dobson and the Islanders offense. Impressive win against the Coyotes the other day. They have been one of the highest scoring teams in the league since like mid-November. It's crazy to see what they've done under Lane Lambert after earlier in the season. It looked like maybe he was going to be fired or something because they were blowing so many leads. They're actually one of body of work and offensive productivity, one of the most impressive teams and most consistent offenses in the whole league. And Noah Dobson, he might not win the Norris Trophy for NHL's top defenseman because of the likes of Quinn Hughes and Cale Makar, who we mentioned earlier, and Evan Bouchard is absolutely automatic for the Oilers. But he's right there with Bouchard in terms of points per game. He's got 38 in 38 games. A big surprise for me just to see how far the Islanders have come with virtually the same group of players, adding just only Bo Horvat last year at the deadline, and they've just completely transformed offensively this season.
Anna, which blue liner are you slotting into your lineup?
So I know I just hyped up the Colorado Avalanche, so I want to throw some love in the other direction in that game. And I'm taking a look at Gustav Forsling, who's been a player I've been pretty high on. He kind of gets swept underneath the rug in terms of how deep their blue line is over in Florida, but he's been playing really, really well right now. He has 5 points in his past 6 games, 2 goals included in those 5 points. And with those injuries, I don't know if those players are playing or not, but he might have to take a little bit of a bigger role in this matchup and keep that momentum going.
All right, Anna and Pete, thank you very much. Appreciate the time. As always, we got another playoff berth on the line today, folks. Can Mason Rudolph get the Steelers in the dance with a win against the Ravens? Our guys are back with their best bets next.
Welcome back to hour number 2 here of The Sweat. Steve Buchanan, Julian Edlow, Josh Applebaum. On this hour of The Sweat, we're going to recap the 2023 happenings on the DK Sportsbook. Josh and Julian are going to get into some college hoops, and we're going to even give some bold predictions for us for 2024. But let's head back to the NFL, and another pivotal game in the NFL here today is going to really kind of decide how the lay of land is going to be here for the playoffs. Steelers need the win here today, guys. Here are the scenarios where the Steelers make it to the playoffs. So obviously they have to win first, most importantly. If the Bills lose and they're in. They're in if the Jaguars lose or tie. Jaguars have a lot on the line there in that game against the Titans next week. They win. Texans and Colts tie. They can make it in with the tie there. A lot of scenarios there. So those are the other scenarios where they can get in. So a lot rides really on this Steelers win here today, guys. So let's get into this game. But first off, let's kind of just talk about Mason Rudolph. He has really kind of rejuvenated this offense here. He's kind of playing like what I thought Kenny Pickett was going to look like. Going downfield, that's what we saw from Kenny Pickett during the preseason there. Didn't really equate into the regular season here, but since taking over in Week 15, Julian, he has a 69% completion rate, 115 passer rating, 10.5 yards per pass attempt, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. What are your thoughts here on Rudolph going against really the B squad here of the Ravens?
Yeah, I like the way that Rudolph's playing, and I would look to him prop-wise. The issue is, what's the weather going to be like for the passing game actually out on the field with the heavy rain?
This is a weather-worthy time. This is worth talking about.
This is a weather-worthy time. It's January 6th. We're outdoors in Baltimore. It's going to be pouring rain. It's a hard spot to back the props. But, you know, and when we get more into this game, like it is a spot that the market is going against Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh needs it, and I find it really interesting. I'm looking for a way to back Rudolph. I can't do it on the passing yards, and the passing touchdowns, like minus 270 to throw a touchdown pass. I'm not going to go there, and I'm not going to tell you to go under because I do think he gets there at some point in some, whether it's a screen pass or they're down at the goal line and they find a way to throw it in. So I got to pass on the Rudolph props, but there's certainly an angle here for him to have a very good game and try and lead his team to the playoffs.
So, Josh, I'll throw one here at you that I do like. Longest completion over 32.5 yards is one way I think I can back Rudolph here. He's gone over 2 times in the 2 starts he's made with a 42-yard completion, an 86-yard completion. And then here's the thing here, and this is kind of why I like this one here. We talk about how good the Ravens have been defensively all season long. You're not getting that team here for the Ravens defensively. They're basically sitting anybody who really means something in this offense or on defense, guys who are nursing injuries. They obviously want them ready for the playoffs when that comes around in a couple of weeks here. So I do like Rudolph to go over at 32.5 completion. Longest completion in this game. You have a prop here for Mason Rudolph. But again, and you can speak to this here, the weather is going to be pretty detrimental in this game. Yeah,
I think that's what you're a little bit worried about if you're going to play any overs in this game in terms of the passing game. Now, Rudolph's over-under is 187.5. It's minus 115, both sides for the passing yards. Seems very doable. But again, what's the game script going to say? If it's going to be super hard, raining, windy, cold, is that going to mean that they're going to run the ball more, throw it less? Are there going to be turnovers, fumbles? Maybe that's another way to look at it. Missed kicks, missed field goals, that sort of thing. One thing that did jump out to me, though, Steve, is Deontay Johnson. His receiving yards prop is 37.5, but it's really juiced up under minus 120. Deontay Johnson's a guy, kind of boomer bust. He could go over, he could go under, kind of unreliable. We've seen him quit on plays. I don't get what's going on him with, there's a play where the guy fumbled, he just stood there, didn't even jump on the ball. I don't think this is a guy you can rely on, especially in a game where it could be really weather-based and kind of anti-throw and pro-run. So I lean toward Deontay Johnson under 37.5 receiving yards.
So let's talk about the Baltimore side here. We kind of alluded to that in the first one here. They're resting a lot of guys. They really have nothing to gain by winning this game or losing this game. Huntley's going to be in for quarterback, and we mentioned early in the show here, he's probably the best backup quarterback in the NFL at this point because you insert Huntley, you are basically running the same system. He tailors exactly to how the Ravens run this offense. Guys that are out, though, obviously Lamar Jackson is out, OBJ is out, Marlon Humphrey is out, Malik Harrison's out, Darryl Worley's out, Zay Flowers is out. So a lot of key names that are out in this one. How much is this affecting how you're betting this game, Josh? Because all things equal, the Ravens are going to be the team that's favored in this one.
Yeah, so I think to me, Steve, it depends on what you have in pocket. Like, for example, when you heard the news, and this is why when it comes to Week 18, they're like information-based bets. They're kind of like the preseason. When we kind of got the news that Baltimore has nothing to play for, they're going to rest their guys. This game opened Baltimore as a favorite, laying 3 points, somewhere around there. If you're able to jump on Pittsburgh as a short dog, getting a couple points, or you money line them at around a pick 'em, then you did your part. Wash your hands free of it. You're beating the closing line. You're just going to sweat Pittsburgh. But I think if you haven't bet this game yet, I think the play to make here is Baltimore, Steve, because we moved so much in favor of Pittsburgh, flipping all the way to a 4-point favorite at one point. That 4 is now down to 3.5. Those 3.5s are down to 3. And we were talking right before in the last break that maybe even get down to 2.5. That's really the way the juice is trending at this point. So I'm going to take the points here with Baltimore. A couple reasons like Baltimore, divisional dog. We'll get to Brad Allen in a second, but he's a big home ref historically. Tyler Huntley is 5-3 ATS in his career. And also, I'm banking on Harbaugh and the culture of the Ravens because, yes, they have nothing to play for, but Harbaugh in his career is 61% ATS as a dog. And a little quote that he said earlier this week, he said, no matter who you play in the particular game or situation, there should be no lack of motivation. Our guys love to play. They're pro football players. They want to go out there. They want to win. We want to put our best foot forward. It's a division rival. It's the Steelers. Certainly doesn't lessen the motivation. So according to Harbaugh, they're going to play hard. Next man up. I'm taking the points of Baltimore.
You're taking the points of Baltimore. Are you still taking them for that 2.5, or is that when you go to Pittsburgh?
I would maybe tease them up for 2.5. Yeah.
Okay.
Again, because it's a super weather game. Again, the fact that it could be a low-scoring game.
It's a weather game. Maybe. It's a super weather game.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to the next level here with this weather game. But yeah, I think if it's 2.5, you look at a teaser. But Steve, I think you like Pittsburgh better at a buy low number there at the 2.5, right?
Without a doubt. I mean, obviously, I think this is going to be a close game, even with how the Baltimore is resting so much, but Baltimore is still talented. Again, you bring in Huntley, you still have a very talented offense, despite some of those wide receivers being sitting out here. Which side are you going with here, and Julian?
It's the under for me.
Sure.
I think the under is we can sit here and argue about who's going to win the game. I think the under, given the circumstances these teams are in and the weather. If we want to go and look at this one, these two teams have combined to go under in 6 straight games, and each of the last 3 have been totals in the mid to high 30s. So these AFC North games to begin with have been grinders. You look at the average of the last 3 meetings, it's landed on just over 28 points per game, with a high of 30 points in any of those games. So you tie in the motivation and what these teams do when they meet up. I think that the under is the play. In terms of the side, there's 2 ways you can look at this. It's that Pittsburgh needs it, and you bet Pittsburgh because of the gotta have it factor, or that you're getting the discount on Baltimore, and people will just overlook, okay, Baltimore doesn't care about this game. Well, they don't ultimately. They're telling you that by sitting their starters. But the guys that are on the field are professional football players playing for their money, getting opportunities that are limited opportunities for them. This is a huge chance for them to look their best. And I think that's the argument for taking these dogs in the, over-adjusted markets because of who's in, who's out, and who has to win. So I think this is a really dicey game, ultimately, to bet. If it got down to anywhere where I could bet Pittsburgh like minus 130 or better on a money line, I would have to take it. But with it where it is, it's a pass on a side for me.
Let's just quickly go on some props here. I'm glad I got this number early. I do like the under on Tyler Huntley's passing yards. I got it at 163.5. It's down to 158.5 this morning already. But you look at the wide receivers you're going to be working with: Aguilar, Bateman, no OBJ, no Flowers, and this one here. Pittsburgh coming in very healthy in this team. They're going to basically have all their defensive guys out there. They did have Lamar Jackson under pressure on 38% of his dropbacks in Week 5. Any props you like in this one, Josh?
I'm going to go to kind of a chalky prop, but it just keeps, screaming at me here. George Pickens, over 46.5 receiving yards. It's minus 115 to the over. I don't like the weather situation here, but this guy's just been getting so many targets and becoming the go-to guy for Mason Rudolph. I mean, since Rudolph took over, you've seen Pickens get 7 catches for 131 against Seattle, 4 for 195 against Cincinnati. Actually, back in Week 5, it was a low-scoring game, Julian mentioned, I think it was 17-10. He had 6 catches for 130 receiving yards. So again, the weather is kind of in the back of my mind. Do I want to bet these overs on receivers if it's going to be a running game and hard to throw the ball? That is worrying me a bit. But man, that seems like a low number. Obviously, because of the weather, it's probably adjusted down a bit. And I'll also put the angle of Humphrey and Worley, 2 guys you mentioned, Steve, who won't be playing. That's a top cornerback and a safety here who won't be able to cover him. So I will still lean toward Pickens over 46.5.
Jules?
I don't think I'm ultimately going to get to the window on anything in this game, but the one that jumped out to me is we're talking about Tyler Huntley. Great plug-and-play guy, fits Lamar Jackson's skill set. Well, Tyler Huntley's plus 330 as an anytime touchdown score.
Yeah.
And, we know Baltimore's backfield has been dinged up all season. They want to preserve that health for the postseason. This is a good game. And then we have the weather. What's the passing game going to be? This is a good game for Huntley to maybe get into the end zone at some point in time. I think getting over 3-1 is a pretty good value there.
We'll touch on this one quickly, but Brad Allen is going to be the referee in this game. It's usually not a good sign when we're talking about referees here, but just some stats on games that he has been involved in. The over has gone 5-9-1 when he's on the field, averaging 41.5 points per game. The home team, 9-6 straight up favorites. ATS 5-9-1. I mean, I don't really
adds up to Ravens.
Right, absolutely. I mean, I don't really take into account referees too much. Sure, it can be a spot that you can take a look at here, but Josh, any thoughts about the referee in this one?
So I think referees just in general, when you're betting on sports, it's something you want to be aware of, but you never want to bet a game only because of it. Unless it's like Scott Foster and Chris Paul, whatever that crazy thing. Was it James Harden or what was that? I think he lost 15 in a row with Foster as the ref. Something
Harden
like that.
did?
It was either Harden or Chris Paul.
Oh, it's Chris Paul. It's Chris Paul and Scott Foster. The greatest rivalry in the NBA, but we'll save that for another segment.
Yeah, but other than that, it's a cherry on top. It's something to be aware of. I think if everything's lining up in one direction, you have low bets, higher dollars, reverse line move, everything that I look for on a home team, and you have a home ref historically, then okay, I'll take that. But I don't think it's something you want to bet just because it's a referee angle.
All right, ton of college basketball that Julian and Josh are going to get into. They're going to break it down all for you here when the Sweat returns on DraftKings Network and VSiN.
Welcome back into the sweat here on DraftKings Network. It's Saturday, Josh.
But
there is no college football on for the first time in forever. And you know what that means? They're smart. They make these schedules. They know what they're doing. Huge college hoop slate. We're going to get things going right away at noon on the East Coast. Big one in the ACC. UNC coming off a pretty nice road win at Pitt. I took the points with Pitt, home dog, the other night during the week. Lost it. Clemson went to Miami. Loses a game to Miami. They've been a very good team this year, even on the road. Now Clemson, early Saturday tip-off. They're at home against UNC. I think you know where I'm going with this one, but I bet Clemson early, minus 130 on the money line. It opened 1. We have ballooned to 3.5 here. I think 2.5 and minus 130, minus 140 is about as far as I would go. But maybe we get some UNC money, bettors waking up. Ooh, look at UNC, higher-ranked team, underdog, and bring this one back a little bit. But fantastic spot for Clemson here at home.
I'm right there with you, Julian. You got a great number on this one, and I love this spot for Clemson for a couple different reasons. Number one, Clemson has the line move. Clemson actually opened, it was like a pick'em game, -1, very short number here. They're all the way up to -3.5. They were -3 this morning. So this has been one-sided movement in favor of Clemson and fantastic bet splits. Only 30% of bets are going with Clemson, but they're getting almost 70% of the money, and the line is moving in their favor. So this smells to me like a classic fade the trendy dog play. Public's loading up on UNC, higher ranked team, quote-unquote wrong team is favored, yet the odds makers have taken a position on Clemson, causing this line move in favor of the Tigers. Two ranked teams take the home favorite, one of my favorite system matches, 9-1 this year straight up, Julian. It's 105 and 25, 81% the last 3 years. So I know this price is climbing. I don't love how it's climbing, but I'm still going money line. I think you're like minus 165 now.
That is a crazy good
It's good in college football and basketball. It's weird.
Yeah. All right. Another one, SEC here. The odds makers have taken a position on this one too, but the betting splits look completely different. Kentucky at Florida, big SEC road game. Florida opens laying 1. That's up to 3.5 as well, but it's only 16% of the bets for 24% of the handle on DraftKings, 84% of the bets for 76% of the handle on Kentucky. Yet this one has moved just as much without necessarily the money there. So some very respected money, even though slight, must be coming in on Florida. I have not bet Florida yet. I had this one circled, didn't know where I was going to go. I might ultimately wind up disagreeing with the market here. If I can get 3.5, 4 at tip, I might play Kentucky here, but I understand what the market is telling us.
Chomp, chomp.
I know.
Gators, baby. Let's go Gators. I love this spot. If you like Clemson, you got to love the Gators today. Very similar situation, but even more contrarian. This game opened -1.5 Florida, as you mentioned, Julian, all the way up to -3.5. Now, to your point, it may come back down a little bit. Some books are juiced +3.5 toward Kentucky. So if you wait it out, you want a better money line price on Florida, you might be able to get it here. But this one is just such a reverse line move. Only 16% of bets, as you mentioned, Julian. Everyone has taken Kentucky in this spot, yet this line keeps going to Florida. What's going on here? This would be that classic unranked unranked home favorite versus a ranked opponent. That system match is 65% against the spread since 2017. You have seen Florida go 6-0 at home this year, and they have a big advantage on the offensive boards, 41% versus 28%. So I love it when you get these games where everyone's taking the trendy dog, yet the line's going to the contrarian favorite. I love this spot. Give me Florida chomp chomp money line.
Yeah, that could be the only one where I wind up disagreeing with the market today. We'll see where it goes. I understand the analysis and the thought process and where that's going. Let's stick in the SEC here, where I'm going to get back on track. This one opened with Arkansas as a 5-point home dog to Auburn. We're down to 2.5. I played it at 3.5 last night. I still like it at 2.5. I still like Arkansas on the money line if you want to play them. Again, we got an unranked home dog against a ranked team, although Auburn just on the fringe there at 25. I like Auburn a lot. They're a very good team. They got size, bench depth at guard. They're a good team. If you watch that Duke game going to Arkansas early this year, you know that is a tough place to play a big game, and this is a big game in Arkansas. Arkansas has all the talent. They have the pieces. They have the veterans transfers in. They have the McDonald's All-Americans freshmen coming in there. They have probably more talent than this Auburn team, as good as Auburn is. I think this is just going to be a really tough atmosphere for Auburn to go get a win. I am taking Arkansas with the points, and right now, as we sit on DK Sportsbook, 54% of the bets for 87% of the handle on the Hogs.
Great bet split, Julian. I'm going to lean pretty hard with you. I haven't bet this one yet. I'm wary of maybe not getting the best number. You saw this yesterday, the UConn Butler game. Julian, did you notice that? That was a huge move toward Butler, and inevitably UConn covers the number, but I think that opened like 7. They lose by 7. It closed 5. I think if you're betting these games, you really want to be conscious of, has it moved too much? Is the value gone? Maybe you live bet it, maybe you watch it and don't bet it. That's not obviously an answer anyone wants to hear, but just again, have a cutoff number in your head where if it's moved too much, you feel like it's better to lay off.
Totally agree with that. The reason that I'm still okay with it here, UConn, elite national title contender, Butler, move too much. This one, I feel these two teams are pretty even, and you're getting Arkansas at home, so I'm still good with the number. Providence, Creighton, big number, much bigger than, not much bigger, a couple points bigger than I expected. I wanted to lay it with Creighton. I still might lay first half with Creighton. Hopkins, Providence big man, best player, tears his ACL at home in a rare home loss in Providence to Seton Hall. Now they're on the road at Creighton. Creighton's coming off some bad losses in the Big East. Spot screams Creighton, big enough that you're willing to lay all these points with them?
I am. I'm actually, the number is so high that it actually makes me more excited to bet Creighton in a weird way, because you mentioned it, Julian. Providence is ranked 23rd in the country. Creighton is unranked. Yet Creighton is minus 11. Like,
unranked
what?
Double digits. Let's go.
What is going on here? It makes absolutely no sense. And I learned a long time ago, a mentor of mine always said, if it doesn't make sense and it's fishy, take the fishy side that doesn't make any sense. So to your point, Creighton opened minus 10.5. They're up to minus 11. Public is all over Providence, seeing that little number 23 next to them, saying, hey, take the points. It's way too high. But only 30% bets, way more money, more than half the money on Creighton. Ken Palm's got it right on the number at 11. But this would be that unranked versus ranked situation. And you mentioned that huge injury to Providence. Hopkins, second leading scorer, 16 points a game. It's terrible for him. He's out for the year with a knee injury. But Creighton's offense, I just think they're going to pour too much on here for Providence to keep pace. Over 80 points a game, better field goal percentage, 3-point free throw. I think this could be a blowout win, and I'm going to actually lay it with Creighton.
That, if I get in on that game, that's probably going to be Creighton first half for me. They got the spot going for them. They're at home looking for momentum, and I think Providence maybe will struggle earlier without Hopkins, figuring out how to play without him, and then maybe adjust later. You got the big number late, free throws, etc. It can get messy. So first half for me on Creighton, if I do go there. I'm going to go to the Pac-12 here for another one. You know who's been playing really good in the Pac-12? Stanford. They have that win over Arizona, dominant win over Arizona, and they're at USC here. USC is one of the places I don't give as much of a. I love home court in college hoops. These games in LA, it's Saturday afternoon, it's early in LA. People have things to do. Maybe they don't. LeBron will probably be at the game. It's USC and the Lakers played last night, so LeBron will be there. Maybe kids will be nervous, but I don't really care. You got a win as a dog over UCLA, so they didn't have a letdown spot after the Arizona win. Whereas USC, they've won 2 of their last, 7 games here. One of them was over Cal. One of them was over Alabama State, laying 18.5. USC has not been very good. So Stanford on the road, but not a tough road spot. +5, that's way more than I think this should be.
Yeah, to your point, Julian, we have seen the line go to USC a little bit. It opened as low as
shocked.
Yeah, 3.5 up to 5.
I put out 3.5 last night. I was fine with it.
Yeah, and I think at this point, if you bet USC earlier and you got a 3.5 or a 4, then hey, you're feeling good the fact that it's gone to 5. But now at this point, I agree with you. I think it's a buy low spot to take Stanford in this spot. +5 inflated off the opener at 3.5. Look at the bet splits, only 40% bets, 48% of the money. So you're kind of not really in a sharp spot, but I would argue a value play with an inflated line in a contrarian game. And also the Bronny James factor. It's great to see him playing well and getting better each game. But, you get the glitz and the glamour and LeBron being there. That's just kind of a public narrative that I want to go against. Hope Bronny does well, but I'd lean with you and hope that USC, loses outright or wins by 4 or less.
I am hypothesizing, by the way, that LeBron James will be at this game. I do not know that for sure, so do not factor that into your handicap. All right, let's sneak over to the Mountain West for a second, Josh. I'm really close to hopping on this one with you, but I'm not quite there yet. Utah State laying points at home against a ranked Colorado State. We know what that means. I know. Colorado State has some good wins, and Utah State, I just looked at the games. They don't have the level of competition. I might need to see them compete with a team like this before I can bet them. But I have all day to think about it, which means I'll probably be on Utah State. You can try and convince me more why I should get there.
Julian, come on. The bandwagon, the Aggies really bandwagon is screaming for you to come and join us in this one. I just got to play this as really one of my favorite system matches in all of sports betting. That unranked home favorite against a ranked opponent. Colorado State comes into this one as your ranked team. Yet, Utah State is unranked and Utah State is favored. What's going on here? Makes no sense. Public is all over Colorado State as a trendy dog. They're getting upwards of 70% of bets. However, this line has pretty much stayed the same or moved toward Utah State. A lot of books were like -1.5 up to 2. We're pretty much staying at -2. But with everyone taking the points here with Colorado State as the ranked team and quote unquote the better team, you go on Twitter, the wrong team is favored, all these cliches you hear from the betting public. Why is this line staying where it's at? Why isn't it down to a pick? Why did it open with Utah State favored in this spot? And why hasn't it moved down if everyone's betting Colorado State? So I got to play this spot for Utah State. Unranked home favorite versus ranked opponent. It's been a great system play for years.
All right, there's some college hoops for you on this Saturday. We will be back on the other side of the break on the Sweat here on DraftKings Network to talk all kinds of 2023 money maker and bankroll breaker recaps that we don't know the answers to, and we're going to try and guess.
to the Sweat final half hour of this 2-hour show here. We got Steve Buchanan, we got Josh Applebaum, we got Julian Edlow for the next couple segments here. We're going to be looking back and looking ahead at some money makers and some bankroll breakers throughout the year. So who won users the most money, who lost users the most money here, and we're going to start. And I feel like this list is going to be kind of obvious. The other list, maybe not so much.
The first one's easy. The
first one's kind of easy, yeah. But the most bet on sports by handle on DraftKings Sportsbook for 2023. I think we can all agree that number one should be football.
Out of the way.
I would hope that it's football. Are we going to do like a little reveal here, I believe, on the list here? But I think football is pretty obviously.
This is a unanimous team.
Is it NFL or college?
Unanimous team best bet. It should go football, basketball, baseball. No?
Football, basketball, baseball. Yeah, I would think.
Would you put college football over NBA? See that you get nitty gritty here. Are we going pro and college, or how are we
I guess
doing?
we should have specified: is college
NFL's
football and
king,
NFL a separate sport?
I guess that's a question.
All right,
Yeah,
so
you
here's
put
the reveal.
NHL at the bottom.
Wow.
Well, we're wrong,
So here's the reveal.
and it's
So
not separated by college and
basketball.
pro.
Yeah, so basketball, football, baseball. Baseball just edging out tennis and soccer.
Tough look for hockey is what this list tells me.
Yeah, really tough look for hockey here. I think moving forward we got to scrap our hockey
More
segments.
handle on hoops than football.
So if anything, this actually tells me that we need to scrap the hockey segment.
Yeah, we need to
start
bet more
doing more
soccer,
tennis and soccer.
Yep.
It's basically what I'm getting at here.
Tweet at me if you're a tennis expert. We need a tennis segment.
We
over
used to have
hockey,
a tennis
apparently.
expert. That guy's an idiot.
I have never placed a tennis bet in my life.
Yeah, me neither. Well, maybe we should start because
Soccer only World Cup
out.
every 4 years, but yeah.
Okay, we're gonna do an NFL all moneymakers team. So obviously,
We said it starts easy. We're already wrong.
right? Yeah. So we're gonna get smoked on this one here. So this players that made you the most money. We'll kind of construct a team here. So if we had to guess a quarterback, what do we think
all right,
about?
well,
we
here
got
go
a
the
little
teams.
thing. All right. So what do we think about the quarterback here for moneymakers? I'm thinking Lamar.
Well, so this is like by handle rather than like if you lose on a guy, it doesn't go away. It's by like handle who made the most. So like
Right.
who do people like betting the most? Obviously, it has to be a popular team. Lamar Jackson's a good guess. Patrick Mahomes, because people are going to bet him a lot in cash tickets. I would guess maybe Mahomes.
I think it's going to be Jackson. What do you think?
It's probably like Jared Goff or someone like that.
No.
Or Stafford? Yeah.
Yeah.
Stafford actually could
Are we
be a
going
pretty
fantasy?
decent one.
No,
no.
I'll handle. Okay.
Yep, handle on Sportsbook.
All right.
I mean,
So I'm going to go Jackson. Running back, I feel like McCaffrey has to be at least one of them.
Yep.
CMC and
Justin Jefferson, receiver.
We're not getting there. It's two running
we're on
backs.
RB2.
This is a hard segment.
It
is a hard
is hard. The producers really hate us. They're throwing us into the fire here.
So I'm going to say it's McCaffrey, and then I'm trying to think of who could be another.
Nick Chubb before he got hurt.
No.
Well,
'cause-
but then the time being hurt, the handle is
Right,
not going to be
That's true.
there.
That is true.
see, I was thinking maybe David Montgomery because he was in the end zone fairly often.
He was also hurt some.
Yeah. All right, wide receiver. You said Jefferson can't be in there because he missed a good chunk of games.
Tyreek Hill's got to be.
Tyreek Hill obviously has got to
yeah.
be one of them. I was thinking actually Rashee Rice too because he was kind of the top receiver.
He
there
can't.
for
He
the
can't be
Chiefs.
this. He can't make this list though.
What about tight end?
Travis Kelce, Mr.
No,
Swift.
I would
It's
say
not?
Kelsey's not on there.
Really?
Well,
Kelsey's been a lot of unders this year.
So he has definitely lost bettors a lot of bets. But again, we're not going. This isn't like I put out 2 plays today and go 1-1 minus 0.1 units or whatever. If I win the bet on something, that's handled to the payout.
Right.
So I think Kelsey still is probably on there. I think
think-
your boy Sam Laporta's on there.
I was going to say Laporta or Njoku would be on the tight end one.
Joker's been a great over.
Defense and kicker, I'm not even going to bother, so let's just reveal the list because I'm not even going to go through that. Oh, Jalen Hurts.
Justin Tucker?
Pushes. We stink.
Zerline.
Isaiah likely made more money than anybody in 2023.
No, that's
No,
wrong.
that
Producers
can't be
are
right.
wrong.
That's
Check
gotta
your
be
check
wrong.
your numbers.
Yeah, that's a load of crap. Just like our old tennis expert, that's a load of crap. There's no way that's right. I don't believe that at all, Drew. I'm sorry. All right, bankroll busters. This is the one that I like. Bankroll breakers, I should say.
See, this one's hard too.
Number one, I feel like has to be the Chiefs.
Well, see, that was going to be my guess, but guess what they did in 2023? They won the freaking Super Bowl. You know what the payout was on that? It can't be the Chiefs.
Yeah, I feel like it has to be up there though. So Chiefs, I think.
Who's the most notable team that's been the worst against the spread in 2023 would be my
Well, that's the
Or
other
is it the Eagles? It might be the Eagles because they lose the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And then they've been awful recently against the spread. I'm gonna guess the Eagles.
So Eagles on there. I think the Saints are going to be on there too as well. There's definitely been a number of games where they were favorites and they lost straight up. And same with Atlanta. They were also favorites in a bunch of games and lost straight up there. So we're going to say Chiefs, Eagles, Saints. What was the other one that you said?
I only
Saints.
said the Eagles.
What about the Patriots? They didn't cover a lot of numbers.
Yeah,
People
actually,
still
good
wanted
call.
to believe in Belichick.
Patriots
Think they
could
can turn
be
it
on
around.
that
Never
list.
turned it around. Maybe.
I think that there's a good chance that despite how bad the Chiefs have been this year, the Chiefs are not on that list because of how much money they made people in the Super Bowl.
All right, so here it comes. We're going to take a look here.
Chiefs won.
Chiefs,
What do I know?
number one. Bills.
I guess the Super Bowl doesn't count anymore.
Niners, Chargers, Eagles.
I need another
Bills for
specification
sure, they
from
don't
the
cover.
producers.
Yeah.
Is this 2023 calendar year or 2023 NFL season?
It has to be 2023 NFL.
Because
season.
it has to be because otherwise that.
Okay,
you
so
can't win the Super Bowl.
I'll lean on
Drew,
you.
Drew says it's calendar.
All right, so I'll lean
The
on
Super
you
Bowl
guys.
doesn't even matter anymore.
I'll lean on you guys for next one here. We'll look at the NBA. We'll switch to that graphic there. So, we're doing players now. NFL bankroll breakers.
Who lost the most money?
Kadarius Toney. I don't know.
Tony, no one's betting on
Kadarius Toney lost his own team the most money. I don't know about bettors. So I think Mahomes should probably be on here, and arguably at the top.
Yep.
Who?
Josh
else?
Allen, a lot of picks, didn't cover many numbers. Could that
Well,
be
but
one?
people have been betting on the pick though, right? On the
Well, that's
interception
true.
for
That's
Josh
true.
Allen.
It's a
So that's
little
almost a
tricky,
money
yeah.
maker. Yeah, I know. This is a hard segment.
go a lot of different ways.
If you're watching and you think that this is hard,
Right. So
I think Mahomes it has to be up there. Who keeps disappointing?
So that's what I'm like. Are
Trevor
we also,
Lawrence?
Are we also betting on players that got benched? So guys like
Well, but then the problem is if they sit a certain amount of games, then they're not able to take bets and lose the bets.
Right.
So you have to be consistently playing and going under your expectation.
right. So
is
I think
what you
actually
need to
Josh
think.
Allen's a good call. I think actually Allen should be on there too as well.
I think it's going to be a lot of quarterbacks.
Yep. Mac
Prescott. Put Prescott on there.
All right, here it is. Travis Kelce. Wow. Stephon Diggs. That's a good one.
Kelsey
Stephon Diggs.
should have been. We should have guessed Kelsey.
Diggs, Kittle,
Eckler.
Devontae Adams, Eckler too. Eckler was a
That's
big
a good
one.
list. I'm surprised there's no quarterbacks on the list because we went quarterback
Right.
heavy. Kelsey makes sense because the Taylor Swift crowd is real. Obviously, there's a lot of those people, and they want to bet on Kelsey, and he's been doing awful. That we should have guessed. But I guess Mahomes, and that directly ties in. So I'll give
Josh was
myself
very
half
heavy
credit.
on the Taylor Swift thing when she's not there.
Exactly.
I remember I was yelling at you about that.
Yeah, there's a system. If she's there, you take the over. If she's not, you take the under.
All right, so I'll lean on you guys
makes
for this one.
sense.
This is going to be the NBA bankroll breakers for players.
Players.
Jordan Poole. These are people who you bet on and they failed you.
The
right?
problem
He got a
is,
lot of
again, it's
preseason
calendar.
hype. He
The
got a
problem is
lot of
it's
preseason
calendar
hype.
year, so we now have to split the back end of last season
Okay.
with the front end
That
of
is
this
true.
season. Who did I just have in mind? Anthony Davis.
Always getting hurt. Yep.
Always getting hurt. I would put Anthony Davis in there.
Harden?
Harden, I bet you are correct on because he has just recently gotten hot, but was awful in his end in Philly last season and the start of this season. Man, you got anybody else, Josh? Those are two that have to be way up there.
I can look at builders, not breakers, though. That's a tough one.
All right, here we go.
Oh, we got
Who
the
do we
list.
got?
Tatum is the lead breaker.
Davis, Anthony Davis,
We
LeBron
got
James,
Anthony Davis.
Luka,
Right. Klay Thompson's a
Thompson,
good
and
guess. Luka surprises me a little bit because his player prop is like north of 35 this year. Klay Thompson makes sense. Anthony Davis, we got that should have been higher. I guess just good players. You want to consistently bet the overs and juice them up.
All right, so next we're going to do MLB, so I'll try to carry this one
Yep, help
a
us
little
out,
bit here.
Steve.
This is for players. See, this is tough because I think MLB is like, that's
I got
really,
a great one for you.
Okay.
I'm going to see if you know it.
Is it Jose Ramirez?
It's someone who was so terrible that if you had faded them, you'd be a gazillionaire.
Is it a pitcher or a hitter?
It's a pitcher.
That was so terrible last year. What league are they in?
American League.
Is it
AL Central.
AL Central?
Giolito?
Nope.
No. Cease.
Nope.
Really?
Jordan Lyles.
Oh, God.
25 and 7,
Of
fading
course.
Jordan
Yeah,
Lyles.
yeah.
He better be on there.
Okay, so
25 and 7 fits. To
Lyles.
what? His
If you bet
strikeout?
against him every time.
Yeah,
What do you bet
yeah.
If
against
you money lined against him.
I think it was
Well,
like,
but this is player prop related, right?
yeah.
So I don't know if that.
Maybe it doesn't count.
Okay, I'll go Lyles. I think Jose Ramirez is going to be on there.
Yep.
I feel like Clayton Kershaw might be on there too as well, because he had a pretty year.
Did he play enough?
He got hurt a little bit.
Aaron Judge, a lot of overs, and he had a
Aaron Judge. And
subpar year.
I feel like Max Scherzer is going to be on there too as well. So we'll throw that up here. Trey Turner's a good one. Ketel Marte, Corbin Carroll, Christian Walker, Ronald Acuna.
I was gonna say I bet there's gonna be no pitchers here because they pitch every so often. Whereas
Yeah.
hitters every day, you're
That's
betting
true.
the over on the hits, runs,
sample.
RBI. You're betting the home runs.
All right, so
That
we
makes
weren't
sense.
very strong with our guessing here, but we're going to have a clean slate here in the next segment here because we're going to make it some predictions. For
All right,
what's
that
gonna
we
come
can
up
do.
here. That
There we
one
go.
we can definitely do here. Let's never do this segment again. Please return here for the sweat, which will be right back after
Here,
this
catch
break.
this grenade.
All right, final block of the sweat. Nobody got fired during that commercial
Yeah, that was
break.
a tough
All
segment.
three of us are still here. Tough
Some of our
segment.
guesses were pretty decent. They were close. They had a good thought process behind it.
Yeah, so the 6 people still watching. We appreciate you doing that. But we're going to make some predictions now. We're going to do something that can actually hopefully make you some money here. We're going to go through all the sports here, and we're going to make some predictions here for the 2024 calendar year. Let's start off, obviously, with the NFL here. We're looking at the Super Bowl champion. Now, you have the 2 favorites here, 49ers plus 220, Baltimore at 3-1. After that, it really opens up here. You can get some solid money here on some of the quote unquote long shots here. Like, there's a team that I'm going to say, Josh, I'll see if you can predict. There's a very big long shot on here that people are really kind of taking a liking to for the Super Bowl. Do you know which team I'm talking about?
Is it the Browns?
They're in the same realm.
3,500?
No, it's the Rams at 60-1 that people are really kind of liking here. Do you have like a longer shot that could make people some bigger money here than if plus 220 or plus 300?
So the Rams one definitely is a huge payout here. The Browns one is interesting to me, 35-1, just because they're playing with house money. You get injured quarterback Deshaun Watson, Nick Chubb is out, you're left for dead. You start all these different quarterbacks. You somehow find Joe Flacco from a couch cushion, and he comes in and he plays great, and you have a great defense here. So with Stefanski and the way he's kept this team together, to me that could be worth a look. I'm looking at the top 2 teams though: 49ers plus 220, Ravens plus 300. I lean Ravens in that spot. I think the Ravens, to me, are they show me something every time I watch them. They seem like they're faster. They hit harder than other teams. Lamar Jackson is having an MVP season, and it feels like their path in the AFC is a little bit easier than maybe San Francisco's. You could argue that point, but I like the Ravens here. I'd put a plus 300. Put $100 on that, see what happens. But the Browns to me would be my big long shot.
Julian, the 49ers have basically been here all season long as the favorites to win here, but there are some teams that were closer in odds that are much longer now. You got Eagles at 11-1. You got Chiefs at plus 950. Even the Cowboys at plus 850. Any of those teams kind of catch your eye when it comes to a future bet here?
No, because I think those teams in the NFC have proven that they don't belong in the same class with the Niners. Yes, the Niners dropped that Christmas night home game to the Ravens. Huge win for the Ravens. But when we limit it down just to the NFC, I think these other teams have been hurting themselves. We saw the debacle between Dallas and Detroit in that Saturday night game. Neither team could really pull away. The Eagles have fallen off a cliff. Do we think that the Lions are going to go into San Francisco and be able to win a game like this? If I need to bet beyond that, it's the team we just talked about. It's the Rams. They're 60-1 to win it all, 25-1 to win the NFC. I'd just bet the Rams to win the NFC if you made me bet somebody else. But I think it's the Niners. As we kind of get to this list, these predictions, like who's going to make you the most money, I think teams are betting. I think bettors are betting on the Niners. And Josh said he thinks Baltimore has a clearer path in the AFC. I disagree. I think the clear path is for San Francisco out of the NFC, and I think that betting the NFC all year long, piling on San Francisco plus odds down to now minus 120 is going to be a huge moneymaker for bettors.
Let's talk about a team that could potentially be a breaker here. We got some of the favorites that we talked about, 49ers, Ravens. Like for me, the Bills at 8-1, which is basically priced out as the 3rd best team amongst the teams that are left. Like, I don't think that they're even in that same category there. Yes, they've played better recently, but is that a team that is going to make it to the Super Bowl and win? I don't think they have the makeup to be that team. Cowboys, you could even say that too with how they've played recently. Do you have a team there that's kind of in the favorites realm that you don't think is going to even get there?
Well, so if we're looking towards this postseason versus the entire calendar year, I think this postseason and end of 2023, the loser is the Eagles. The Eagles have been awful down the stretch, and I don't have much faith in them in this playoff run. They've kind of, other teams have figured out the Eagles, put it that way, and they're not. Their best is not good enough anymore, and I don't think we're getting their best. So I think the Eagles are a team that have lost and will continue to lose bettors money if they try and get on Philly in this postseason run. Looking towards 2024, teams that will probably lose bettors money are probably the teams that wind up going deep here, who get a lot of respect early in the year, and it takes time for that respect on the number to kind of go away. So maybe whoever wins the Super Bowl, whoever wins the other conference, maybe inflate it a little bit early in the year. But for me, if I'm fading a team out of this playoff bunch, I think I'm lowest on the Eagles.
What do you think, Josh?
I'm fading the Miami Dolphins. I don't like what I've seen out of them. To me, they're just kind of like a
disagree
paper
with that
tiger. Like, when they play a team that is below them, they crush them. They look amazing. When they play a team that's pretty good and has a winning record, they just don't play very well. So, obviously, they have a ton of injuries right now. You're losing guys like Chubb and as well as like Xavier Howard and all these guys who are banged up. Waddle, Tua's had some issues. They're plus 1,300 to win the Super Bowl. I think the odds makers are respecting that if things break their way and they play well, they do have the offense to take them very deep, but I don't like them to go very far. I actually like Buffalo quite a bit tomorrow, -2 up to like 2.5, even 3. I think Buffalo's surging. Miami's on the downward trajectory. I would bet against Miami, or I wouldn't place a futures bet on them at all.
So we'll kind of do this for the NBA too as well. We have the Celtics, Nuggets, and Bucks all kind of grouped together here as the favorite to win it all. Then it goes to the Clippers, who are 10-1 here. Who's a team that you like here, Julian?
So for teams I like, I'm buying into Boston in the East. They didn't quite make it there last year. They came back from down 3-0 in the East Finals. They fall apart in Game 7 at home. Tatum rolls his ankle on the first play of the game, and they don't get that game. I think they're better this year, and if they're healthy, they're going to come through for bettors that are piling on that handle for the Celtics to win the East, the Celtics to win it all. So are they going to stay healthy? Who knows? But I think they're a team that could come through. I think the other one that is going to make bettors money is going to be the Clippers. The Clippers are slowly, maybe not even that slowly, rapidly becoming the best team in the Western Conference. I think it's 14-2 over their last 16 now, something like that. They've figured it out. I didn't know if they would have it after getting Harden. Westbrook moving to the bench voluntarily was huge. They're 10-1 to win it all. Western Conference, they're plus 475. I think that's going to be a team that I can't necessarily bet them now. I think we're going to get similar numbers later, but if Kawhi Leonard is healthy, this is a team I think that's going to make bettors a lot of money.
OKC, really high in Oklahoma City Thunder.
As well.
Plus 2,200. Again, do they win the title this year? Probably not. Feels a little early, but they've made such strides over the last few years. And shout out to Sam Presti to not give us the process, some word that we can kind of use against them. But they really have done the exact same thing, but so much better than the 76ers did. Bringing the trade in for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, hitting on Chet Holmgren, hitting on these other guys that they've drafted. Now they have a ton more picks. I think if they make a move, they keep their young guys and make a move for a veteran who can really help them. 22-1 for OKC. They showed me a ton. I hadn't really watched them until I watched the Celtics game they played the other day, Julian.
Very impressive.
And man, they are so athletic, so long and tall and defend. I think if you're an OKC fan, you'll love what you're seeing out of this team.
I'll just go to the MLB side here, then we'll do our no sweat bets here. I am just continuously going to give out that I really feel strong that the Royals are going to win the American League Central. You're getting them at 14-1 odds right now in a division that is absolutely wide open at this point. The Twins are -120 favorites. They have barely done anything this offseason, and the only reason that they won that division last year is because the rest of the division was an absolute shambles. The Royals have done a ton of under-the-radar move. They've improved their offense, they've improved their defense, and they've improved the back end of their bullpen, which was obviously not something they need to use much because they were losing so many games. But to me, this is going to be one of the biggest turnarounds for a team in Major League Baseball. 14-1 for the Royals to win the American League Central. Let's wrap up the show like we always do with our no sweat bets. Josh, kick us off here.
I'm going to go college hoops, Clemson. Love this spot for Clemson. I think Julian's with me on this one. Open round of Pick'em, -1. You're now Clemson -3. Line keeps steaming toward Clemson. Early tip-off here, noontime, but they're only getting across the board, 30% of bets, 70% of money. Fishy, why is a 16 ranked team favored over an 8 ranked team? Clemson's off a loss, bounce back spot, and that system I love. 2 ranked teams take the home favorite. 9-1 this year, 81% straight up last 3 seasons. Let's go Clemson.
Julian, a lot of ways you can go for here today.
Love Clemson. The 2 best bets that I put out last night on Twitter, the 2-unit bets that I put out were Clemson and Arkansas. So I'll differentiate us here and go with Arkansas. We're only getting 2.5 now. They're at home. I think that's fine. They've been a fantastic home team. A lot of respect for Auburn. Just very bad spot here in the SEC. 53% of the bets for 85% of the handle on Arkansas. Yes, a chunk of that goes up to +5, but bettors are still getting in there. I think Eric Musselman and crew with a very athletic, young, talented team get the outright win at home here.
So I'm going to go with a receiving prop here in the Texans game. Talked about this earlier in the game here, but love the spot here for Nico Collins going up against a very beatable Colts secondary. I mentioned earlier, I'll go over the stats here once again with Nico Collins and CJ Stroud, specifically under center. Collins is averaging just under 8 targets per game, just under 6 receptions per game, which is what the line is at, 5.5 minus 120 for the over here. 89 receiving yards with CJ Stroud. The line has moved a little bit since the show started, by the way. Texans now favored by 2. That was at 1.5 when we started the show here. So a little bit of movement there in that Texans game. But I think this is a huge spot here for Nico Collins. No Noah Brown, of course, as usual. He's been out for a couple of weeks with that back injury. Robert Woods, even if he does play guys coming into this game questionable, really did not practice much during the week too as well. So I think this is going to be a big spot for Nico Collins. And of course, Dalton Schultz too as well, who, by the way, 4 catches to hit the over on his incentive for the contract there. All right, that's going to do it. Yeah, it is. That's going to do it for this edition of The Sweat. We'll be back here tomorrow for the pregame power-up, 8 a.m. Eastern. All 3 of us will hopefully be here with the storm coming. We're going to try to get here. We'll be here for you people. We'll see you tomorrow. We hope.